How you doing? I'm Callan and this is Slapped Ham. From a deadly trick-or-treat visitor to a boy that went missing after a Halloween party. We take a look at 5 chilling, true-life Halloween crimes that really happened. But before we get into it, remember to hit that subscribe button for more awesome, creepy content just like this.
For one young boy, Halloween didn't result in spooky costumes or trick-or-treating. 9-year-old Ryan Rosales of Washington State was killed by his mother on October 31st, 2017. Amber Lynn James, aged 47, was charged with first-degree murder of the death of her son Ryan. She told investigators that she was trying to save and protect her son from individuals that she thought were following the two of them with intent to harm them. James, who was obsessed with conspiracy videos, had previously contacted the police to report that she was being followed by people in cars. On the day that she killed her son, they were staying with Ryan's father, James Rosales, who later reported to police that he had been taking a shower when he smelled natural gas. In the kitchen, he found that the burners on the gas stove had all been turned on, but the pilot light was out. Rosales confronted James, who denied tampering with the stove. He noticed fresh scratches on her neck and immediately went to check on Ryan. He found his son unresponsive and cold. Rosales called authorities and then began CPR. Unfortunately, Ryan was unable to be revived. James later admitted that she had strangled her son with her bare hands. On July 30th, 2018, James was found not guilty by reason of insanity and mandated to a state mental hospital. She had been previously diagnosed with bipolar disorder and had demonstrated signs of severe mental distress up to, during, and directly after the killing of her son. It was determined by court-appointed mental health professionals that she didn't know the difference between right and wrong at the time she killed her son. Because she was charged with first-degree murder, James could spend the rest of her life in a mental hospital. On Halloween night 1957, 35-year-old Peter Fabiano opened the door, thinking that there would be a trick-or-treater on his doorstep. Instead, he was confronted with an adult in a Halloween costume clutching a brown paper bag. Before Fabiano could react to the strange sight, the masked individual shot him in the chest with a .22 caliber pistol that was concealed in the bag. The unknown assailant then ran from the scene. Betty Fabiano ran to the door to find her husband unconscious, bleeding on the floor. He died on the way to the hospital. At first, no one could determine a motive behind the killing of Peter Fabiano. He was a retired Marine and only had one brush with the law when he was younger. He and his wife lived quite comfortably off the income they earned from their LA salons. It was just 2 weeks after the murder that investigators began to put pieces together when they took a closer look at Joan Rebel, a photographer who had worked in the Fabiano's salons. When questioned, she claimed that both the Fabianos were very close friends of hers, but it was soon discovered that she was particularly close to Betty Fabiano. The Fabianos had recently experienced some difficulties in their marriage, and Betty stayed with Rebel, resulting in their developing a close, possibly intimate relationship. Peter was jealous of Rebel, and when the married couple decided to try and reconcile, it was with the understanding that Betty would have no further contact with Rebel and wouldn't even mention her name. Rebel, not willing to accept that her relationship with Betty was over, began plotting the death of Peter. With the help of her friend Goldine Pisa, Rebel spent months plotting the murder. Rebel filled Pisa's head with terrible stories about Peter, describing him as a terrible, violent, hurtful person who deserved to die. The plan was in place. Pisa, dressed in a costume and mask, shot Peter in the chest on Halloween night. Both Rebel and Pisa were arrested, but it was Pisa who first confessed to the killing, claiming that Rebel was the mastermind behind the murder. In 1958, both women were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 5 years to life in prison. Pisa was released in 1971 and died at the age of 83 in 1998. It's unknown what became of Rebel. It's been speculated that she either died while in prison or that she assumed a new identity after she was released. On Halloween night 2002, 21-year-old University of Minnesota student Chris Jenkins left a party to go with some friends to the Lone Tree Bar and Grill to continue their Halloween celebration. They arrived at around 10:30 PM, but Chris was thrown out of the bar at around 12 AM. When he left, it was bitterly cold at around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and Chris had no coat, wearing a Native American costume. He didn't have his car keys, cell phone, or wallet. What happened to Chris that night remains a mystery. Chris was reported missing and his family were notified. Police officers speculated that he had attempted to walk home, crossing the Hennepin Avenue Bridge in the process. Investigators thought that he had just taken off on his own after crossing the bridge. Chris's parents, Jan and Steve Jenkins, didn't believe that Chris would have taken off on his own. He was considered to be a responsible young adult and would have contacted someone if he was going away for any length of time. They requested that surveillance footage of the bridge be reviewed, and it was soon discovered that Chris had never actually crossed the bridge. 4 months later, Chris's body was found in the Mississippi River. He was still dressed in his costume. It was initially thought that his death may have been an accident or suicide because he was intoxicated on the night he disappeared. However, his parents didn't believe that Chris had died in this manner and insisted on a more in-depth investigation, resulting in his death being deemed a homicide in 2006. The murder of Chris Jenkins remains unsolved, but there have been a couple of intriguing theories about what took place. A man who was in jail for an unrelated crime claimed to have witnessed Chris being thrown off the bridge after an attempted robbery. This explanation would have been plausible but for the fact that there was no footage of this event captured on security cameras in the vicinity. Another popular theory is that Chris was the victim of the unsolved Smiley Face murders. Approximately 40 male college students have died at the hands of this killer, all by drowning. Smiley face graffiti has been found near some of the victims of this killer, but there was no graffiti discovered near Chris Jenkins. His case remains open to this day. On Halloween 1981, Ronald SISMAN and Elizabeth PLATZMAN were brutally murdered in their Chelsea, Manhattan apartment. The young couple had been ruthlessly beaten before they were shot in the head. The apartment had been ransacked and the police thought it was a possibility that drug money had been involved. As murders go, this case didn't seem particularly unusual, but then things got really strange. An informant in prison reported that a fellow prisoner had actually predicted the deaths of SISMAN and PLATZMAN several weeks before the crime actually took place. The prisoner who made the prediction was Son of Sam killer David Berkowitz. There had been many rumours that Berkowitz belonged to a satanic cult. It was even speculated that the cult had helped him to carry out some of the murders that he had committed. The informant stated that Berkowitz had said that the cult would be performing a ritual murder on Halloween in Greenwich Village. Chelsea is located just north of Greenwich Village. When he was later questioned, Berkowitz claimed that SISMAN had footage of a Son of Sam killing. He stated that it had been SISMAN's intention to turn the footage over to police as a bargaining tool to have some drug charges dropped. No evidence was ever found to support Berkowitz's claim. However, he was able to give a detailed and accurate description of the Chelsea apartment where SISMAN and PLATZMAN were murdered. It's never been proven whether the murders of PLATZMAN and SISMAN had anything at all to do with the Son of Sam killings, or even if Berkowitz is actually involved with a satanic cult. The SISMAN and PLATZMAN Halloween murders are still unsolved. Before we get to that number one spot and take a look at one of the most sickening Halloween murders in history, remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on channel notifications. That way you'll get updates on all our latest content. Children trust in their parents to look out for them. They expect their parents to keep them safe from all the dangers of a harsh world, but for Timothy O'Brien, danger resided in his home in the guise of a loving father. The death of Timothy O'Brien was one of the most shocking Halloween murders in history, sparking fear in the hearts of parents everywhere. On Halloween night 1974, Timothy went trick-or-treating with his friends in Deer Park, Texas. His father, Ronald Clark O'Brien, accompanied the children to make sure they were safe while out in the neighbourhood. The children approached a house, but when they knocked, there was no answer. Soon the kids scampered off to the next home, but Ronald stayed behind. Just moments later, he caught up with the group clutching a handful of pixie sticks, stating he had received them from the previous house. He handed the candy out to his 2 children as well as some of the other kids in the group. Ronald and his kids soon headed home, and once there, Timothy asked if he could have some of the candy from his treat bag. Ronald told his son to have the pixie sticks. The child ate the candy and then died later that night. It was determined that the candy powder had been laced with cyanide. Fortunately, none of the other children had eaten the poison candy. During the investigation, Ronald told the police that he had been given the candy by a man at the house where the children had received no answer when they knocked. When investigators questioned the man who resided at the house in question, he had a solid alibi about his whereabouts that evening. He wasn't even at home. This information caused the police to decide to take a closer look at Ronald. It was soon discovered that Ronald had taken out life insurance policies on his 2 children. He was in a considerable amount of debt, and had not only given his 2 children the poison candy, but he had also given it to 2 other children in the neighbourhood as well, in order to make it look like the random act of a sick stranger. He was convicted of murder and eventually executed for killing his son. The case of the poisoned pixie sticks caused many parents to keep their children home on Halloween, fearing that they would also receive candy tainted with poison. Much of the hype surrounding poisoned Halloween candy has been nothing more than rumour. Heart attacks, infections and other illnesses have all been blamed on tainted Halloween candy, but a more mundane explanation always comes to light.
For more scary content, check out our Halloween playlist right there. Also in the comment section below, let us know what you're getting up to this Halloween as well. We'd love to hear about it. And that's it for me. I'll see you all next time.